All right, Sean Payton. I hope he's around. It's going to be my last interview with him.
It's been a minute, and as always, it's good to be on. I feel like we were already hitting on some of these subjects, but
wow.
Got a good weekend, huh? A lot of stuff football-wise.
So I said this yesterday, or earlier today. I said it's a quarterback coach league. And I've never even understood this. You just have to, some things in life you overpay for. A pool in Phoenix. A winter coat in Alaska.
Yeah.
Okay, overpay for your coach. If you got to overpay for your quarterback, just do it. I don't want to hear about it. What Daboll has done to Daniel Jones 18 weeks ago, I'm like, I don't know if he can play in this league. What's his sauce? What's Daboll done?
Yeah, I think two things. There's certainly an energy that you see and you feel with that team. And I go all the way back to my first day here at Fox. New York on the road against the Titans. They go for the win. They win. And,
yes.
And it was the beginning of like the kids in the orphanage that, had a parent that cared.
Yeah.
And you just saw a little bit of a glimpse of that. But then schematically, let's talk specifically. Why is this player playing so much better than and I think you've got to credit Brian. You got to credit Kafka, the offensive coordinator. Yeah. He's got 2 or 3 of these interviews lined up, deservedly so, because they did some things yesterday. And as good as they looked, Minnesota looked that bad on defense.
Oh, my Lord.
There were guys running man-to-man coverage, shallow cross, running underneath a vertical, and a corner's getting left behind and not meeting it. That was frustrating to watch from a defensive standpoint. And so the interesting thing in Minnesota, and Kevin's done a great job, O'Connell there, but they kind of got this offense going, and then there went Mike Zimmer, and it's easy to pile on, but we lost Mike Zimmer's defense. And the defense of the Vikings,
the yards after the catch
for a long time was outstanding. They were a tough out defensively. But yeah, I think both with the running back, Saquon Barkley, and Daniel Jones, I said this to you earlier, to start the season, if we'd have said, hey, we've got a long-term vision for these players, I think we would have just kind of looked at each other like, yeah, what's the vision? And it's not until this year that we got to see the fruits of that draft and with the right coaching.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about anyone prior. I'm just saying, obviously it's fit. And so you look at Barkley now and you say, hey, we've got him. And the run he makes down in the red zone, the tight red zone.
Huge.
Yeah. And here it is in his biggest spot. Daniel Jones, plays well. And we talked about him yesterday. My Twitter blew up because I think the Giants fan, I said, look, this guy's a tick below those 5 that you and I talk about all the time.
Yeah.
But he can move. He can run. Those are all traits that we've valued. We just haven't started valuing those. We've always valued those traits.
Sean, what it was interesting is that I said one of the reasons I picked Minnesota to surprise people this year, I said, when a guy's not Mahomes or an Allen where he's been told his whole life he's great, if he's Kirk Cousins or Daniel Jones, so much of it is feeling supported. And Kirk got Kevin, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I believe in you.
Yeah.
The losses became wins. And about a month ago, so the first thing Daboll did was take out the fumbles and the picks, slightly elevate completions. But about a month ago, and I think you said this, they kind of let Daniel go. And when I watched that, I thought, oh my God, his confidence. And it wasn't until about a month ago when they said, okay, we've cut the mistakes down. Now we're going to kind of let you go throw 40 times. Go. And I thought he was so confident yesterday.
I would agree. And even get past the design runs. I mean, you can't get past those. Those are backbreakers for Minnesota.
Yeah.
But his ability just in the pocket, finding throws. And, here he is on third down, finding a shallow cross, a critical shallow cross that gets dropped. And you're like, and it was
Slayton. Was it?
Yeah. And so the whole time you felt this guy was in command, his decision making, the respect of his teammates. You listen to him afterwards. He sounds just like Eli. I mean, very complimentary of everyone.
Yes.
Probably great teammate and fun to watch. It was fun to watch their locker room afterwards, and certainly disappointing, I'm sure, for Minnesota, who's had a great year.
So I said I've seen it with McDaniel, Brian Daboll, Doug Peterson. They immediately, I saw it with Lincoln Riley at USC. They create an identity. It doesn't take that long to create an identity. Sometimes you have to clean a culture up, make some roster moves.
Sure.
But it doesn't take forever.
Right.
I can go back to your career. You can figure it out pretty.
It's immediate.
Harbaugh at Michigan. 5 wins to 10. They were physical the next year.
It's immediate.
My knock on Brandon Staley has been, when you really need that identity is in crisis, not against the bad team. So I went and looked at numbers. Second half this year, both offense and defense, they're poor. It's not a lack of talent. It's not a lack of weapons. I think often second halves, Niners this weekend, that's when the identity comes out. Guys, we're scuffing a little bit.
Yeah.
We lead. Let's put it away. Is it a fair criticism that this team's talented, but I don't see what are they? I just don't know.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the first thing you'd say, and I don't know Brandon that well. I know a number of guys on that staff. When you hire coaches with a defensive background, I think there's an expectation of what you're wanting to get from that defense. I watched that game at home, and it was, a lot of times we're able to watch games, but you're in a green room. There's 6 screens, so you don't get a clean look at just one game, if you will. I watched that game just quietly looking at it, and after the first half, and you guys tell me, man, it looked like Jacksonville couldn't separate at all.
At all.
And I kept thinking to myself, who's going to make a play for Jacksonville? Who scares them? And I'll credit Doug and Trevor and that whole they're still a few players away from being the team they want to be.
Right.
The tight end scares you a little bit, Ingram.
Yeah.
Right. But it didn't. It just seemed like this was going to be a long. Not like we're gonna have trouble separating. Period. And then on the other side of it, I didn't see anything in their defense, Jacksonville, covering the pass or even defending the run for that matter. It was almost like routes on air for the Chargers, and I've never seen a game where all of a sudden the second half started, and I thought, what happened to what I just watched in the first half? It was very unusual. The momentum shifted. Obviously,
is it a schematic change? What is it?
Yeah, I don't know that I would have changed anything from what we were doing in the first half. I think we all wanted to see a little bit. The clock then becomes your friend. Let's run it. Kick it, pound it, and they didn't make enough plays in the second half. The momentum shifted, and then it just kept going. And I've never seen a game that was so different between the first half and the second half. And I understand what you're saying. Sometimes it's frustrating to watch.
Yeah. Go do what you do. Because I thought Kyle Shanahan, they had a bad late hit. The Seahawks took a lead. That's when you bring him in and go, fellas, okay, let's go back to what we are. We lost ourselves.
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah, and I just don't feel like...
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't feel like they have that.
Yeah, and look, that's a tough loss. You're flying back across the country and you're up 27-0, and it wasn't that they were just up 27-0. It was the way that they were up 27-0. I just felt like
dominant.
Man, the young corner, Asante Samuel's son. I mean, he was leaning, sitting, hanging on routes, and I just thought, and then I kept thinking to myself, I don't think Jacksonville has because the announcers said it. They're sitting on everything. They've got to go buy him, and I thought they don't have the personnel to go buy him.
Right.
And so that's a problem then.
Yeah.
That was a tough game.
So going back to coaching, I remember when Josh Allen was in college, and people, Greg Cosell said, you need to look at this kid at Wyoming. And he gave me some numbers. So I went and watched Josh Allen against Oregon and Iowa, and he was talented and wildly erratic.
Right.
You saw it, but
right.
it was the arm strength was insane.
Right.
And so he comes into NFL, he's raw, and Daboll does what he's done with Daniel Jones, cleans up the mess, gets him to hit more layups. All of a sudden, he's never going to be a 70% completion guy. He's got a lot of Favre in him.
Yeah. Unbelievably
talented. Now Daboll's gone. And I'm watching him, and I'm thinking he's back to erratic decision-making. And I'm not knocking on Ken Dorsey or Sean McDermott, but this is the value of coaching. This team worries me. Sean, I feel like they're a boxer with no jab. It's all swinging for the knockout.
Well, look, I think they're fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that, watching that game, I thought Miami struggled look, the difference, obviously, when you're playing your third-string quarterback.
Right.
They drop some balls. Too many times the receivers are catching balls, cradling balls. And I know the weather's cold, but they're not, catching them properly. I thought, man, there were a lot of clock problems this weekend, period.
Now, do you think that's because it's a third-string quarterback? Is that a fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's challenges. And look, I heard what Mike said, and he brought up that sometimes this happens. It used to be back in the day when the ball was close after a third down play, you could ask for a measurement, and you'd get one all the time. When I was coaching in 2006, 7, 8, 9, 10, I need a measurement here. It looks close. You get a measurement.
Get 30 seconds to.
Yeah, well, but it allows you to digest, because there's those situations where you think you got a first down. You're going to your call sheet for a first down, and then you hear it's 4th and 1. You're like, wait a minute, I want a measurement. You don't get those now. I don't know why they stopped giving those out.
Did the NFL say, speed the game up?
They stopped giving those. They look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, I used to get these measurements all the time. So it puts the play caller in a pickle because he doesn't know at the very end of a play if it's a first down or if it's 4th down.
Right.
That happened to them. And here it is, 4th and 1, burning a timeout.
Right.
Baltimore yesterday, in a 2-minute drill, inside of a minute, they're huddling with no time.
I didn't get it at all.
I had no idea what was going on.
That's a backup quarterback situation.
Yeah, but, man, when are you ever putting a team in the huddle when you're south of a minute and the clock's ticking and you need to score like they did? I couldn't believe it, and the announcers said something, but they actually got into a huddle with a running clock underneath 40 seconds, I think. I think it was 38, 37. That was surprising. I'm sure John today will look at that and be like, that can't happen.
Can I ask you about, I am not a fan of, so the NFL has tweaked it and allows you to get behind somebody and push them for a first down. I saw it 8 times this weekend. I am not a fan. Now, Trevor Lawrence did it and it worked, of the hike, lean over. Now,
all right,
Trevor's
so you ready?
6'6".
I'm going to give you the history of the hike, lean over.
Don't like it at all.
Listen, I love it. I love it. 1 yard line in versus a goal line gaps front where the pad level's low. Drew Brees, we were 4 or 5 for 5 over the career, but it's situational. At the 1 or in, goal line front, preferably a 6'2 front, and Drew would always just jump, push the ball over, and pull it back. So let's talk about that. Knowing we would call that, I'd run down to the official and say, hey, just so you know, we're going to place this ball over the goal line. I wanted his eyes there so he didn't miss it.
Okay. Oh.
All right. But it had to be at the 1, and it had to be versus a 6'2 goal line front.
This was 1.5.
Too far. First thing I said, too far. I looked at my wife. I said that it's way too far out to do that. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar doesn't score with that. So that it can only be almost inside the 1. You with me?
Yeah. The ball's on the inside of the 1.
Take a look at Jacksonville's example. But the other thing that was unusual is I saw Baltimore trying to push so if we were applying that up and over technique, you seat the ball, Drew would tell you there's a little delay, and then there's a vertical leap and an extension, and it comes right back. You cross the goal. So you have to be inside the 1.
Did you say 2 hands or 1?
Drew would have 2.
Okay, I like 2.
All right. So where that was run from was too far out, period.
Yeah.
When you watch Trevor's, all right, it was right at the 1. Now all of a sudden you saw the stature, that certainly helps. But we never looked at that like we were going to push the quarterback. So there are 2 things were going on there.
At one time.
I mean, is the quarterback, I'm going to guess the quarterback chose to do that on his own.
Okay.
Because if we're running this push, then we're going to seat the ball, we're going to find the soft spot and allow the second wave to push us. That was unusual, but that was the game. That was the game.
Oh yeah, it's 14-point swing.
That was the swing, and as soon as they ran it, I thought he's too far away.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a low push. That's what Harbaugh said after the game. It was supposed to be a low push.
Yeah, so that makes sense because you wouldn't run the leap high from the 1.5. So low push, Pilot does his own thing. We're back to the backup quarterback.
Okay, so I want to pivot to tonight, Cowboys-Bucks. And one of the things, whenever there's a divorce, it can be in somebody's private life. I've had one. It could be football. Everybody always, this to blame, that to blame. And I'm guilty of this. I was a bully with Mike McCarthy. I said, Aaron's too good. McCarthy drives me nuts. I don't like him. And now we look, and Aaron, 3 straight years with LaFleur at home at Lambeau, has struggled late in games. Outplayed by Goff, Garoppolo, Old Tom. Aaron's still great, but Mike's gone. Mike is 21-12 when Dak's healthy and 4-1 with Cooper Rush. And I think clearly, if you look statistically, Dallas is a good offense. They're not perfect. He's had to rebuild the O-line.
Sure.
They don't have a true dominant one.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of this. I was pro-Aaron. McCarthy's lost. If Mike wins tonight, that's a little flex. That's a big game for Mike. That's a big game for Mike McCarthy tonight, I feel like. I don't think there'll be pressure, but maybe he's not, he's not Andy Reid. He's not you. But I think I've been guilty of this. We've been a little hard on Mike. There's something he did in Green Bay that he does in Dallas. He builds a formidable offense, little pass better than run. Look, your takeaway on McCarthy.
He's a real good football coach. We always talk about bloodlines and, when you have a chance to work under Andy and the Holmgren, that's that family tree that's really strong. He's a tremendous worker, great guy. I think a good friend and a respected coach. Always has his players prepared, and so I think. Look, I think they've done a great job this year. They went through the injury and had to play Rush. They weathered that, went 4-1.
Very well.
They're the better team tonight. Now, there's pressure on them tonight because the narrative, and it's not Mike's narrative, this is Jerry's narrative and the Cowboys' narrative for the last, they haven't won a road playoff game since Jimmy was there up in San Francisco. So that's not Mike's pressure. That just organizationally, the Cowboys are that team that so many people love watching. There's so many people that love the Cowboys. But if you don't love the Cowboys, it's not like, you don't like them. You hate the Cowboys, right? It's one or the other. And so
when they lose, here comes the avalanche.
Oh, my gosh, yes. So, I think Tampa's playing with a little bit of house money. We've talked about this. Division winners, 9-8, didn't play well throughout the course of the season. Yeah, struggling running the ball. They get their center back tonight. That's a big deal, Jensen. He's starting. He's coming back off of IR. They're still going to struggle running, I think. But, when they played this team week 1, which seems like an eternity ago, they ran the ball pretty well that night. That was, the opening week of the season. I think Tampa's playing a little better than they were 4 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. The 2 hard games for me this weekend to handicap, I said, were yesterday's Giants-Vikings. I missed that. I had Minnesota winning.
Yeah.
And I picked a big number just to separate myself from the rest of this group. Right. But I think tonight's the other game. All the other games I felt were maybe Jacksonville, the Chargers, but tonight's a tough one to handicap because you got Brady at home. And you got Brady at home in Tampa and Dallas. Now, I think Dallas playing poorly last week
helps.
I do. I think if you're Mike and the coaching staff, man, you are on there, all week long.
You were embarrassed.
Yeah.
It was bad.
And much rather be embarrassed in that game than tonight's game.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be an exciting game. I have no idea who's going to win. I think Dallas is the better team.
Yeah.
And we've seen that throughout the course of the season.
Yeah.
So that, we look forward to watching that.
So let's address you. I've heard Texans. I've heard Carolinas out there. There's Denver discussions. Can you verify this week? This is the week now, starting tomorrow or
tomorrow.
Tomorrow you can interview. Are you interviewing?
Yeah. So the way the league rules are set up for coaches that are under contract with teams, and that would be me, they can begin the interview process tomorrow. I'll have a chance to visit prior to then. Like, I've talked with a few teams. Mm-hmm. That's just done through permission with the Saints. But I think this week would be Houston, Denver, later in the week, Carolina.
Do you go there?
In some cases, depending on schedules, they'll come here, or in other cases, Zoom. I might go there. End of the week, I'll go out to New York. I'll have a chance to visit with Mr. Tepper in Carolina.
If I may, what's the compensation look like? Can I ask that?
We haven't even met yet, so that's probably something. Well, no, that's something that comes up later in the process.
I mean, that matters.
Yeah, but being that I haven't interviewed with any of these people yet, it would just be speculating relative to.
Can I ask this question?
Compensation for the trade or compensation for me?
Well, let's start with a trade. Okay, so the Saints, for instance, Denver doesn't have a first because they gave it up for Russell. So I'm not sure even would that make that problematic?
No, I think each team would be a little different. Mickey Loomis and I have talked already about it. I think ultimately the compensation for the Saints would be a mid or later first round pick.
Okay.
Now, we can arrive at that in a lot of different ways. I think Denver has a pick they acquired back when they traded. It's the 49ers pick. Yeah, so they have that.
Okay, you're right. So it's end of first round. You're right.
Yeah, but each team's got different ammo or different pick selections, and it could be a future one maybe where you have to throw in something. I say this because I know Mickey well, and I heard him talk the other day, and he was right on, and I think I am too. He's got a job to do as a general manager with the Saints, and he'll get the right compensation, and I'm sure the team, if it gets that far, will arrive at it. And it's probably this year, it would probably be, a mid to late first round pick, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Now it changes if nothing happens this year and we go next year. Then that changes considerably.
Do you believe, Sean? For years and years, I've had friends who coach, and I say, why are you rushing back into it? To me, the two things that would matter, and I'm a novice, is ownership stability and quarterback. I could deal with, and if I don't know a GM, but he has a nice reputation, I'll figure that out.
Sure.
It doesn't matter who it is. You can get along with people. It probably won't be Mickey Loomis perfect, but you can get a good guy. Ownership, quarterback. Is that how you view it?
Yeah.
Okay, those are the two biggies.
Yeah, I'd start with ownership and just because, look, finding both, generally speaking, if the quarterback is there, they're probably a team that's playing well, generally speaking. And so the teams that have openings, I'm not going to say are broken, but they've had problems. That's why there's an opening.
Right.
And so I think that element's critical, the ownership element, and philosophically, because and I've said this, and I hope it's not looked at as an indictment on certain teams, but there are a number of teams. It's hard to win in this league, and it's certainly harder to win in this league if there's internal problems before you even play an opponent.
Right. Let's say it's a bad. Let's Texans. It's a team they got to find a quarterback probably. Are you willing to consider that? If
absolutely. Here's why. And look, I think I know the ownership group not very well, but we practiced against the Texans in New Orleans 4 or 5 different times. So Cal McNair, his late father, we'd see them, and so I don't know them well, but I know them. We've when you practice for 3 days with an opponent, you get a chance to meet a lot of the different personalities and people involved in the building. They've got really good draft capital, really good draft capital.
Couple good young players.
They're in a division that you can at least look at and say, all right, Indy, Tennessee, Jacksonville is nothing. But you can at least, all right, how do we? So I think there's growth potential immediately there from their 2 or 3 wins that they had this year. I know Nick a little bit, Caserio, because, again, when he was in New England, we had a lot of practices with their team. So each team would be just like we're having that discussion. There'd be pros, and that's the significance, though, of the upcoming week or two, of meeting some of these individuals, asking some questions, maybe some difficult questions, and trying to get answers so that we're not having difficult questions when you've already taken the job.
You're a year away from football. One of the things I've noticed, and I've noticed this over the last 6 or 7 years, fewer huddles, worse clock management. That jumps at this weekend about 7. Not good. Is there anything that you've viewed from Fox, you're perched down, and said, this is one thing I'm going to take with me? That, you're on that treadmill. As smart as you are, sometimes when you're on the treadmill, stuff flies by and you don't see it. What has been your big takeaway watching the sport and not coaching it?
Yeah, I think the value on field position and understanding field position relative to points, Parcells taught us that, all of us, when we were young coaches. If you really did a study, 100 yards equals 7 points. And so the hidden yardage in games, you see from afar how valuable that is, and sometimes how it's in a lot of cases not given its appropriate value on game day. In other words, coaches, we spend a lot of time talking about analytics, and what are the 2 things when we bring up analytics? We talk about 2-point plays and 4th downs. And there's so much more to analytics. You and I were just talking about play sequencing. A good offense oftentimes is making a 1st down before they ever get to 3rd down. So in the CFL, you have 3 downs.
Yeah.
Right? So, that CFL stat's important. I want to know how we're doing on 1st and 2nd down. How many times are we gaining a 1st down on 1st or 2nd down? It's CFL numbers.
I saw 3rd and 15 20 times this weekend.
Yeah.
You play behind the chains, it's over.
Yeah, and the funny thing about 3rd and 15, when it's 3rd and 4 and you're on the headset, you hear 6 voices. Everyone has a play. When it's 3rd and 15, it is like crickets. You don't hear one suggestion. Anybody got an idea? And it's just
that is funny.
But it happened. 3rd and long. I'm trying to think of the game, and Tony Romo had the game, and he called it. And I think it was Baltimore. I'm not sure. What game did Tony have this weekend? Anyway.
Oh, Tony had the Buffalo game.
And it was Buffalo playing Miami, and Miami throws a deep interception, 3rd and 15, when it should have, coming out, backed up. And
I agreed with him there.
100%. Run a draw. Improve your field position. When you're backed up, the rule of thumb is 2 1st downs and you go back to a neutral field position. So if you're on your own 5 and you're forced to punt, advantage defense, right? Because they're going to receive the ball at the midfield.
Yeah.
2 1st downs puts it to a neutral field position.
Right.
Back to where the game started, if you will. And we as play callers control so much with what the quarterback may do. And so if you call an aggressive play.
30 left.
Yeah, an aggressive play like that, then it's intercepted, and that happens in the red zone. That was a tough down for him.
To your point, Baltimore and Miami, it was just the little mistakes on clock management. It's amazing who won and lost this weekend. It could be completely different with better clock management. Sean Payton, what a great second hour. He's got to go to Zoom and talk to some of these teams.
Yeah.
Back in a second.
Thanks.
The NFL playoffs are here. Easiest way to get into the action is with FanDuel.